Hey, it's Sean from the Commander's Brew. This week it's Anhelo the Painter. We're going to see if we can do something different from this commander from the Maestros Massacre Precon deck. Stay tuned. Anhelo is a pretty cheap commander, 3 mana. That means we'll be able to cast him a few times, and the key ability that we're going to build around is the Casualty 2, the first spell we cast each turn. Instant or sorcery, that is. So I think at first glance, there's kind of an obvious way to go with this deck. Obviously, Talrand is absolutely perfect for a Spellslinger deck with Casualty 2 because everything that we make has 2 power, so all the Drakes get to be Casualty 2 to copy our spells, and we get to make more Drakes every time we copy a spell. Dika, Fractal Theorist, basically the same thing as long as the spells cost 2 mana or more. And then Shark Typhoon's kind of an expensive version of Dika. But here at the Commander's Brew, we always want to do something a little bit different, you know? Off the beaten path. Restriction breeds creativity. So I got to thinking, and I'm always very excited to make some kind of storm deck. You know, run stuff like Frantic Search or Big Score, cards like that. But then I realized Anhelo only gives Casualty 2 to the first spell you cast each turn, so Storm's out. And then I started thinking, what commonly has 2 power? Zombie tokens. Could we do Anhelo zombie tokens? I think we can now that we got all these decayed zombie tokens from Midnight Hunt. Who cares if we attack with them or not? We're planning on sacking them for a Casualty 2. So we got Jadar, Ghoul Caller of Nephalia. Great way to start us off. As long as we don't have our first Decayed token, it gives us our first one to sack. Poppet Stitcher is the Talrand for this deck if you want to do zombies. Making a 2/2 Decayed every time we cast a spell, that's exactly what this deck wants. I'm not sure that we're going to transform this very often into the Poppet Factory. Gives us a little +1/+1 on everything effectively, so if we are planning on attacking with a very wide board, maybe. And Wilhelt the Rot Cleaver. Wilhelt's great for sacking regular zombie tokens, and then they turn into decayed zombie tokens after we've Casualty 2'd them. But also, we get to sack a normal zombie and make it decayed just to draw extra cards. I don't mind that. And one of the keys is when we're looking for spells that make zombies, which we are, and ideally we want to make more than one, because if we're casualtying it and spending a zombie to get one extra zombie, there's no profit there. I look at zombie tokens like profits. I'm in the zombie economy, the zombie economy, zomcombany, zombicombany, zombie. It sounds like it should work, but I can't put those words together. Something like Siphon Flesh is a nice way to spend 5 mana and probably get 6 zombies and clear out a large portion of the board while we're at it. From Under the Floorboards is a good one because we can get 3 zombies doubled into 6 zombies on our turn, but I think I'm more interested in madnessing this out. Anhelo gives you Casualty on the first spell you cast each turn. So if we can madness this on someone else's turn, then we can cast it for X and maybe make 4 or 5 zombies, double that to 10. That seems pretty good. And of course, if you're making a ton of zombies, you gotta do Army of the Damned. It's a hefty cost, but if I'm gonna casualty it, let's casualty a ton of them. Just hope no one has Rakdos Charm. Speaking of the flashback on Army of the Damned, something like Final Parting is a nice kind of tutor for the deck. If we get to double this, then we get to search for 4 cards, 2 of them go in our hand and 2 of them go in our library. So I'm happy to put Army of the Damned in the graveyard, and maybe I'll put a Past in Flames in the graveyard too. Past in Flames technically doesn't really work with Anhelo in what we're trying to do, in the sense that you can't copy Past in Flames. You can't give a spell double flashback. And since this will have been at least the first spell we've cast, maybe past the first, nothing that we've given flashback to will get to have Casualty 2. So this is just more for value. And here's why I love brewing with a little bit of a restriction, because now that we're focusing on zombie tokens, we got access to Amass on those cool creatures that buff up zombie tokens. Vizier of the Scorpion gives all our zombie tokens Death Touch. Very nice. And Dreadhorde Twins does Amass 2, which is big enough for us to sack for Casualty, and gives everything Trample. So now if we've got both of them out, we're giving them Trample and Death Touch, which is a very nice combo. 1 point goes to the defender, and the rest goes to the person behind him. Gleaming Overseer rounds out the bunch, giving them all Menace and Hexproof. So now you can't target them. You got to block them with 2 creatures at least. And if they have Death Touch, I'm going to do 1 of their 2 damage to each of those blocking creatures. Yeah, pretty good. And I think I want to make room for Endless Ranks of the Dead. It's a 4-mana enchantment that can be dead on the battlefield if you don't have any zombies. But with the amount of zombies I'm planning on making, I suspect this will give us tons of fodder for casualty 2. We've got a bit of our engine set up. We've got the tokens and we're copying some spells, but what are the really fun spells to copy? If we're going to assume Anhelo is going to be on the battlefield most of the game, I think Yawgmoth's Vile Offering is excellent. We can put 2 creatures back from the graveyard and destroy 2 things. But if you're worried that maybe Anhelo won't be on the battlefield as much as you want, maybe something like a Ghoul's Night Out. It's a 5-mana sorcery, and we get to put a creature from every graveyard, including our own, onto the battlefield. They have Decayed, so we won't be able to attack with them, but we're going to choose stuff that works better if we don't have to attack anyway. And even if we plan on attacking, I want to take something big that only needs 1 attack to do some real work. And if we do have Anhelo, that's 8 things from other graveyards. That's a lot of things. If you put a spell on the stack and then copy it, you don't have to pay additional costs that you already paid the first time. That's where cards like Thrill of the Possibility are pretty good. It's a 2-mana instant, which means we can cast it on someone else's turn, so we can copy it with casualty too, but we only have to discard the card the 1 time. We get to draw 2 cards, copy it, and draw 2 more cards for the cost of 1 card. 2 mana and 1 zombie. Bankrupted Blood is interesting because we have to sacrifice 2 creatures to draw 3 cards. And if we sacrifice a 3rd creature for casualty 2, now we're drawing 6 cards. And that's pretty nice. And I think part of the real value in Anhelo is that you don't actually pay mana for these extra copies. Baral's Expertise is going to be so fun to cast. I'm going to return 6 things to their owner's hands, and then I'm going to cast a 4-drop and another free 4-drop. Spend 5 mana and 1 zombie, get 8 mana back. And if you want to talk value, let's copy Abrasa's Bounty. This is a spell that's worth copying. And if these spells are worth copying, they're worth copying again. That's where Errant Street Artist comes in. Really hard to wrap my head around this one, but pay a blue, flash it in. It has haste, pay a blue and a 1, and then you can copy another spell you control that wasn't cast. Copies aren't cast. It's a weird rules thing. That's why Storm works. Errant does add mana cost to copying spells, but it's kind of like the 3rd copy. There's probably room for Errant in here. But Twinning Staff is something that definitely has room. You pay 3 for it once, and now every time we activate Anhelo's Casualty 2 ability, it's not technically an activated ability, you know what I mean. Every time we Casualty 2 to copy something, we're going to copy it an additional time. This is probably the best card on the deck, right? Okay, I do want to present a pretty neat move here for you. It involves mass land destruction, so bear with me. Devastating Dreams is a fascinating sorcery. It costs red, and as an additional cost, you discard X cards at random from your hand. Then everyone sacrifices X lands, and this deals X damage to each creature. So you're going to clear the board with it, and you'll probably get rid of a bunch of lands. So for this to do what we want it to do, clear out all the lands and clear out all the creatures, X would have to be like 6 or 7, maybe 8. But if we've got an Anhelo, we can copy this. That seems much more doable. Red, discard 5 cards in my hand, copy it with an Anhelo, then all the creatures take 10 damage and everyone sacrifices 10 lands. That ought to be the reset we're looking for. But the interesting thing about this card is we will want to tap all of our mana in advance and then cast something cool after we've wiped the board effectively, and then we'll have the only things on the battlefield. The problem is you have to discard at random, so you can't just plan it out however you want. That was until they gave us Foretell. Rise of the Dreadmarn is something I plan on foretelling in advance, and now, after I do that Devastating Dreams, how many non-token creatures do you think died? 10? 11? For that single black mana, I got a ton of zombies back. My army's back, baby. And with all those extra lands that I tapped, I've only spent 3 of them so far, so maybe I've got enough to cast an Anhelo again from my hand. I mean, I don't know what I'm doing with them. I've got no more mana. I'm hoping to win this way. If that backfires or you just aren't comfortable running something like this, there's a couple of other backup plan type creatures in here. Octavia, Living Thesis. I'm assuming in a Spellslinger deck, we're going to have 8 or more instants or sorceries in our graveyard, so this basically should cost blue, ward 8, and now when we cast things, we get to make other zombie tokens into 8/8s. Or we could go even wider with something like Rise from the Tide. you know I'm going to copy it. And if I've got a bunch of instants and sorceries in the graveyard, that's going to amount to a ton of zombies. Or something like Burn at the Stake. It's a 5-mana spell that, again, I'm definitely going to copy it by sacking a zombie. The additional cost is to tap a ton of my zombies, and Anhelo, and Octavia, and everyone else. So you tap all but one, because you got to sack one for casualty 2, and then you're going to do triple that damage to one player, and copied triple that damage to another player. Maybe there's just one more player at this point. Me. I'm the last player. I'm the winner. Once this deck gets rolling, I think it could be really fun. So there you have it. Anhelo the Painter, but the zombie version. I think this is an interesting brew. I'd like to make it in real life. I love the idea of having a deck that when you pull out the commander, people think they know what you're going for, but you got something different to show them. Come back next week for another deck tech, and in the meantime, keep being you. The world's a better place for it. See ya.